Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Where we got to last time is the introduction. So today we'll be carrying on with the signs. Chosen. What does this mean? It means, in simple terms, chosen to be seen, responded to, respected by God. While one is infinitely more powerful than the other, there was no need to do any of it. The respect certainly goes both ways. Having a scientific mind, I was able to measure my approach to the signs. How? Well, if you're measuring God, you best bring a bigger ruler. My initial thinking went, the first sign was for me, so the second sign would be for another person, and if there was a third sign, it would be for the world. That was as far as I extended my rational thinking. I would let God fill in the minutiae, and I used the signs to eliminate any possibility that the message was not from God, while also considering that this was not a normal occurrence. It meant something profoundly different and important was happening. 4 times now, Q has interacted with me in a deterministic manner. There can be no denying causation in these signs. This reminds me of a video that was played to a group of us when I was a child in primary school, where you are told to concentrate on the dancers, performers, or the routine on a stage, while a man creeps out, dressed possibly in a monkey suit, and moves around the stage being funny. I saw the man instantly and laughed out aloud. Then looked at one of my friends next to me, pointed and said, "Do you see the man?" And he did not move to answer me back. Looking around at everyone gathered watching, perhaps a dozen or more children, they could not see it. They all stared straight-faced, completely fixated on the screen. It was as if they were all blind, and it was right there in front of them. How could none of them see it? Was it beyond their ability to process complex situations? Will these signs be beyond your ability to process complex situations? Sign 1. When I was at university during my second year, 1993 to 1994 roughly, I asked if God existed to send me a sign. While I do not recall the entire interaction perfectly, I will give as much detail as I remember. I went through a mental process beforehand, what to do and how to do it. I was in bed on my back with my legs bent, knees up, scrunched up a little using a pillow perhaps, sort of semi-sitting up under the duvet thinking, wondering whether to grasp my hands together or not, but thinking if God was all-seeing, what did it matter if I grasped my hands together? That was surely made up, so I did not. Thinking to myself to see if God exists, there were 3 reasonings I came to. If I wanted to speak to God, then I needed to speak to God. If Jesus is or were God, then I am still speaking to God, or still needed to speak to God. And if Jesus was not God, but pointing to God, then I still needed to speak to God. So I decided I would speak directly to God. It made perfect sense to me. So I asked God to send me a sign if he existed. It would include please, 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 and some scrunching, and suddenly my whole body was warmed all over at the same time, tip to toe, for about 10 seconds. Then it stopped, and my temperature returned to normal, if you like. I believe I mentioned something or other about this cannot be real, and asked for the sign again, and immediately my body was warmed like a strong heat all over my body, everything at once, toes to head, for about 10 seconds. I did decide to sink into that warmth and found it comforting. When it finished, I believe I said this cannot be real, or words to that effect, and asked for it to be done again, and nothing happened. So I put this on the back burner, that I might come back to it in future, a decade or two perhaps, from then, to ask again, to see if it happened again. I was aware that this could be some bodily response that I was not aware of, a perfectly normal response to some mental stimulation that produced a warming effect that could be easily explained through medical means. So I went on with my life and thought little about it, except every now and again I would search for such an occurrence and see if it had any medical merit. I also considered that were this true, that I had an opportunity to prove God's existence, not just with words, but with actions that could be seen and recorded. In this period between the first and second signs, I would go on to help solve as many of the world's problems or part thereof, while remaining anonymous, helping as many people as I could in as many fields as I was able. I then wrote the paper, A General Theory of Artificial Intelligence, in 2019, bringing some of what I had been talking about over the previous decade or more together on websites and filling in some gaps, which shook the research and academic world to its core. Sign 2. While in bed in late June 2021, I woke up around 3 a.m. This was all covered in another paper I wrote. I contemplated a test for a Q-type being in this universe to prove they existed. I considered it was the right time to revisit this issue. I thought about the previous interaction and decided this time to eliminate any medical bodily issues, but also, if real, to expand my understanding of what God's capabilities were. When I was deciding on the second sign, I contemplated a giant smiley face on the sun and ruled that out, as it was perhaps too big. I did not know the extent of God's capabilities, and the scientist in me was considering starting smaller. I came up with a test. First, I would say out aloud that I would give this Q-type being this test in my mind. I was gracious and asked nicely, and as a polite gesture, I gave permission for God to read my mind. I started off with the words, "Hello and welcome." I decided, because everyone was always asking for help, that I would ask for something to be taken away instead. Something that would be annoying to me, but not a total loss. God would essentially be a pain in the arse, and I came up with removing some invoice papers from my desk that were under some other papers. 2 of the triplicated copies, not entirely a loss, as I could get the other copy back from the book held by a different person, Kevin. It would be an elegant proof of God, since this would affect two people with a mental component no one else knew about. That is exactly what happened. When it came to doing the paperwork, the invoices were gone. I absolutely knew where the invoices were. Kevin absolutely knew where the invoices absolutely knew where they were, as he saw them being placed there. And Kevin is absolutely sure I am not the person or type of person to lie about this. So yes, God was a pain in the arse, but in both an annoying and rewarding at the same time. I would continue to solve the problems of the world. Sign 3. The third time occurred after I visited a church, a synagogue, and a mosque to inform them that, as far as I could tell, I was the chosen by God. I did some research about it, read a lot, found very little, as instead of the Bible and other texts being full of writings from a chosen, it's filled with stories from people that are not chosen, self-elected people who think they are worthy enough to speak about God or for a chosen. I wrote several emails to the major religions, and in one about them being hesitant about a person proclaiming to be chosen by God. A natural response. So I said, I would ask in this email. I would ask God to send them a physical sign. I did not put down in the email what I would ask for, because I felt at the time, what if God chose a different sign? I would look like a fool. After sending the email, I asked God to send them a big sign. I then went on to think, well, a big sign would be a massive volcano exploding, or a meteor. A great big volcanic explosion would be cool. I did the hand signals for it. Boom. It would be so cool. It happened 2 days after the second chat, after I received the words in my head, trust in me. Words I am pretty sure I did not put there, and about 4 to 5 days in total from the email. I emailed all the religions again after to let them know they had received their sign. The Tonga eruption had exploded like nothing the world had ever seen before. Big, yes. It was the biggest volcanic explosion ever recorded. So big, in fact, it went into space. Many scientists did mention at the time it was unlike anything ever seen before. From this, I gained the understanding that I could ask for specific signs, and I was not being presumptuous. It would appear being chosen gave some latitude in the signs I was able to ask for. I would continue to solve the problems of the world, and I published the paper, A General Theory of Sleep, on preprint before sign 4. Sign 4. What I'm about to tell you is the most profound, scientifically verifiable piece of evidence there is. As far as I am aware, when American scientists saw this, they immediately contacted their European brethren to ask them if they were seeing the same thing, to which the Europeans confirmed. Back, I believe in September 2022, certainly through to October, I was considering that perhaps I could be crazy. With all these signs, could something be wrong with me? I had 3 solid, undeniable signs, actual physical responses to requests in the real world. So how do you know if you are crazy? It's like, how many crazy people do you know? What is your sample size? And no, you can't list your family. Therefore, I ask you, God, to put a giant smiley face on the sun. Eyes, mouth, nose, and eyebrows. But no pipe, as that would almost certainly be too much, and too many people might suspect. I was trying to keep as much free will as possible. I wondered how many people would be smart enough to understand it was not natural. You can watch the satellite video footage from the start of the whole event. Do not just look at the final image. Anyone can go and look at this. Search for complete satellite video of sun smiling. The sun is 1,000,000 times greater in size than Earth. Its surface is in constant flux, and nothing can survive for long. What you will see is a giant smiley face. Eyes, mouth, nose, and eyebrows rotate into view. It gets right in front of the satellite camera and then dissipates. Job done. Scientists always ask for recordings so they can be analysed. Well, I have provided that extraordinary evidence. The hall is rented. The orchestra engaged. It is now time to see if you can dance. Search for the complete satellite video of the sun smiling. I've put a YouTube URL there that I did find. So please go and look at it. Thank you.